everybody, John with Owl, and today we're going to talk about winching. We've had a problem. Look, this van, shockingly, has fallen into this hole. How could that hole have gotten here? How could this van have ever gotten stuck? The details are unimportant. What's important is unless we self-rescue, we may die. And by self-rescue, I mean winch out with a little help from our friends. So I want to impart this without sounding over the top. Before you go off the grid, you need to have the tools and the equipment that allow you to survive if something goes wrong. You're not setting up your van to look cool. You're not setting it up for how good it performs on the trail. You're setting it up to be a tool that you can rely upon when you're in a sticky situation. And one of the most critical components is recovery gear. And I don't just mean a winch, I mean recovery points. Here on the Pismo bumper, we've got other recovery points on our ridgeline. Here we're going to rescue this van using its own winch. But first let's talk about winching, and then we can talk about all the rest of the stuff. So this van has a Pismo bumper, which replaces the factory bumper. Now the factory bumper has a little hole right here, and then in the passenger footwell is an eyelet. And you're going to get that eyelet out, you're going to pop this plastic cover off, you're going to screw that in. Mercedes claims that's not really a recovery point, it's a tow point. And you cannot recover from that point at any sort of angle. So if you're off the trail, a lot of people ask why everyone that overlands puts bumpers on their vehicle. Well, these recovery points are a massive part of that, because seldom do you get stuck where there's a perfect line of sight to getting out. Often you're in a really weird situation, sometimes you're backwards, oftentimes the van or the vehicle will be at a tilt. So utilizing the factory Mercedes recovery hole is really not a smart option because you're very limited in what you can do. Okay, so let me show you some other items. Now, this is an Owl tote, shameless product placement, but what I suggest people do is get your recovery gear, your soft shackles, your pulleys, all the different items, your tree savers, all the kinetic ropes and all these things, and put them into a single recovery bag in your box. These are made to fit in the box. You grab your recovery bag, it should have everything you need in there, including your gloves. Now, I most recently went wheeling in this Grenadier, and since recovery gear is crazy expensive, I actually transfer it from vehicle to vehicle. So in this case, because I didn't want stuff flying around and we don't have a box in the Grenadier similar to a Sprinter van, I put it in these drawers. But what I've got here is various recovery gear. So this is what's called a tree saver. And what we don't want to do is run a line around a tree, because we like to be able to go off-road, and when you run a winch line around a tree, A, it can damage your synthetic rope if you have a steel cable, and these are two different types of winch line. If you have a steel cable, which is kind of an older technology, you'll kill the tree, because as that cable tightens, it's going to cut into the bark, and the last thing we want to do is damage any of the wildlife around our trails. Certainly here in Arizona, do not attach it to a cactus. They're not strong enough, and the saguaros around here are a protected species, so you got to be really careful and do a little bit of research before you go out and try to attach your winch to things. These are called soft shackles. This is a shackle. Again, steel lines have moved to synthetic lines. Steel shackles, still very useful, still very usable. People are moving to synthetic soft shackles, and the reason being, winching is dangerous. It's not that dangerous if you take the proper precautions. This can become a projectile. If this thing breaks or snaps and this hits you, you're donezo. This is a strap. You can wing this at me at 100 miles an hour, and the worst it's going to do is cause a bruise. So soft shackles are a little bit safer. They do, however, have a shelf life. So these, although not terribly expensive, do wear out in time. This soft shackle that comes from our recovery kit is obviously gorgeous blue, but it's also got a special coating on it to make it last even longer, because UV damages synthetic ropes. So let's talk about recovery. So when you're going to winch, first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw out some line. This is basically the gear or the clutch. You can pop that, twist that forward. Every winch is a little bit different, but they're pretty similar in that regard, and you should be able to pull this line out to where you need to go. In this case, we're going to be winching to our Echo. Now you can see here what I was talking about. This is all radiused, and so it's smooth, and so you can use soft shackles. The same is true of this. This is radius, so we're able to use a soft shackle to attach these two. So I'm going to take the soft shackle, I'm going to run it through here, I'm going to run it through here, open up this, put the ball through, and then I'm going to tighten it on the ball. Then we're going to get it like that. This is a synthetic line, as I said. And why would you choose synthetic line versus steel? Main reason is, again, coming back to that safety. This line does not store kinetic energy, and a steel line does. And so what happens when a steel line snaps, A, it's steel, but B, it whips, and it's got a lot of energy in it. When this line snaps, it's theoretically supposed to drop straight to the ground. It's not exactly how it works, but this is vastly safer than having a steel line. So if you get a winch, if you don't already have one, I suggest getting a synthetic line. If you have a steel line, you are able to swap it out for synthetic lines. It's fairly easy. Another thing before you winch, go check out my video on how to spool your winch. If your winch is brand new from the factory, it has not been spooled. So you need to spool it to make sure you're not damaging your rope. This one's been spooled, so we can go ahead and recover from it. But if you haven't done that, go check out that video on how to spool a winch line. So there's two types of remote controls you may have. The winch on the Echo is a wireless remote. This one is wired. So back here on the back of the winch is a little rubber boot. You pop that boot off, and then this flat part on this Warn, the flat part goes up. You got to be a little dexterous here. And you slide that on, and then you can lightly press on the remote. There should be an in and an out. And then one of the issues that's a little bit tough on these sprinters is seeing the line. So it's really nice when you're spooling it up to be able to see where the line is. Basically, as you're winching in, you want to try to look at the winch line and make sure that you're feeding the line back and forth on the spool, lining it up next to each other so you don't have any gaps. The other thing that's important to keep in mind, these vans are super heavy. This is probably close to 10,000 pounds. Echoes are like 11 and change. This is a 12,000 pound winch. Now winches have some overage built into them, so you should be fine, but you only have 12,000 pounds of pulling force on the first spool of the drum. So think about it like a bicycle gear. The smaller the gear, basically, the more power that's going to have. As it gets bigger, it's going to move more slowly, but it's not going to be as strong. You're essentially gearing it as you grow more line. So if you've got a heavy vehicle and a 12,000 pound winch, we can talk about how you can deal with that. This is a direct pull. So we're going to be pulling the van directly with the power of the winch. We can also go out to that vehicle or to that tree or whatever you've attached to, back to this vehicle with a pulley, and that's going to double the power of your winch, but it's going to have the speed. So basically it becomes a 24,000 pound winch, but it's going to winch at half the speed. So that's why we carry pulleys, is because we're already kind of at the very edge of what these winches can do. At full spool like this, this winch is probably maxed out. You're in the 8,000 to 10,000 pound range. And if this is an 8,000 to 10,000 pound van, you're right on the limit. First, I'm going to just tighten this up and put some tension. Notice the hand staying away. Okay, so basically at this point, you want to make sure that this vehicle, if you don't have a driver, that it's in neutral and the parking brake is off. Okay, now if you do have a driver, you can have them obviously in there. You want to make sure their foot's off the brake and that they're giving it gas as you are winching it in. You also want to make sure that whatever you're attached to, be it another vehicle, that it has someone in it with a foot on the brake and the e-brake on. So in this case, I'm going to ask somebody to get in that vehicle and put their foot on the brake and make sure the e-brake is on so that we can pull this out. I'm going to make sure this vehicle is in neutral. So as you're about to winch, you want to make sure that everyone's clear. You want them to stand far back, especially if they're not winching. This is why they give you so much cable. They don't want you standing next to that winch in case anything breaks. The other thing you want to keep in mind, look around you. We're winching from a hole onto flat. Now, if I'm solo and I'm winching from a tree, if this is a big downhill, understand that the moment you're unstuck, your vehicle's in neutral. It's going to be going down the hill. So definitely look around at the topography so that you're not winching yourself into a bigger issue. So I'm going to start to feed this line in. I'm not hammering it. All right, so right there, I should have been on the other side to see the obstacle, but I can see the van's leveled out. We're probably out of the hole. Don't go near the line. There's a lot of tension on it. So now I'm going to go put the vehicle in park, pull the e-brake, assuming I'm out of that hole, and then we'll feed the line back in. So now we're going to feed the line back out, or back out. Now we're going to feed the line back out. Okay, so you just need to get some slack on it. If you get really safety conscious, you can actually unplug this so that nobody steps on it or anything like that, but I'm not that worried about it. So I'm going to set that right there. I'm going to come back over here. We're going to loosen up our soft shackle, pop that through, pull this out, and then what I'm going to do is just bring this line over here, and then you want to put some tension on this line. Again, keeping yourself away from where it feeds in. You want to look down there, and you want to pull some tension on it, and then you want to spool it up, again, in that kind of side-by-side manner. As I'm doing this, I realized that I forgot to mention one important thing, which is gloves. Now we're in Arizona, so this synthetic line, you want to leave it out of the dirt as much as possible, because this actually, I'm getting a little bit of cactus spines in my hand, so I'm going to go get a glove, but those will work themselves in and out of the rope. So it's inevitable, especially if you're by yourself, that the rope's going to touch the dirt. You don't ever want to walk on the line, so you don't want to step on it. It's like rock climbing. Whoever steps on the winch line buys a case of beer for everybody. Don't step on it, and try to keep it out of the dirt as much as possible. I'm going to grab a glove. I'm the Michael Jackson of winching. Be cognizant of this hook. If you've got a hook and you're not paying attention, it can hook your jeans, stuff like that. Also, make sure that you do not have any fingers or gloves past these little bumpers on here. You want to hold it very much on the edge and come in slowly. And then put some tension behind it. I suggest that whoever's hand is on this also controls this, because if you get anything caught, you can instantly back off the power. This, I want to leave it a little bit tight, because otherwise you get limp shackle, and nobody wants limp shackle. So we actually have an indexing fair lead on another vehicle that stops this, but in this case, I'm just going to hold this up, tighten it down, and you're good. When it comes to winching, you can go down the rabbit hole. And like I said, I'm sure there's 1,000 people that will show all the things I did wrong. And the main takeaway is that you want to do things thought out, meticulously, and slowly. You don't want to do things quickly when it comes to winching. I encourage you, there are so many videos, much better than mine, on winching out there. I thought it was important to show the recovery points. There's a lot of do's and don'ts when it comes to winching. Don't winch off of a hitch ball. Don't winch off of a hitch pin. You need proper recovery points that have been designed to carry the load. So hopefully this video has been helpful. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to reach out to us. We've got a lot of videos on off-roading and technical aspects of adventure vans and grenadiers. You can follow our YouTube channel. Hope you found it interesting.